Have you told your friends that you see ghosts?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gina Rodriguez returns in Not Dead Yet.
I'm back, baby!
Who is that?
Oh, she's the obituary writer.
And Brad Garrett joins the brilliant ensemble cast.
Titan, Maverick, Titan of all Mavericks. These are all words used to describe me.
Not Dead Yet. Season premiere. Tonight, 8:30, 7:30 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson. Welcome to the Happy Families podcast. Thomas Curran, Professor Thomas Curran, is a British Psychological Society chartered psychologist and an associate professor in the Department of Psychological and Behavioural Science at the London School of Economics, a world-leading expert on perfectionism. This year, he published his debut book, The Perfection Trap, and Dr. Thomas Curran is also a dad to a little baby, not quite one.
Thank you, Justin. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really excited about our conversation.
When I hear you say that perfectionism ultimately is a question of people feeling that they are not enough, our kids feeling like they are not enough, they can't be enough, no matter how well they do, it's still never enough. It takes me back to another paper that you wrote just a couple of years ago where you described how perfectionism has been steadily increasing in our kids for a couple of decades now. Number one, is this trend continuing? And number two, if it is, why?
Oh, goodness me. That number two is a really big question, but I'll start with the first one. Yes, it is rising. And we know it's still rising because I updated the data for my book, The Perfection Trap, which I just published, to get, a really good snapshot of what's going on right now. And what we see in that data is something really, really worrying. So, socially prescribed perfectionism is skyrocketing right now. It's on an exponential curve. It's about 40% up from the lowest points to the very top where it is today. And exponential curves are doing what exponential curves do. It's fast increasing today, and it's going to grow even faster into the future. We have to be aware. We have to be aware of that. We really do. That when you think about the links between socially prescribed perfectionism and psychological distress and difficulty. And then you look at the allied trends that are unfolding right now among young people, increased rates of anxiety, depression, particularly among teens. It's something that I think, it's not the only piece to this puzzle, but I think those skyrocketing levels of perfectionism, social perfectionism, are certainly underneath quite a bit of these more observable, mental health struggles among young people.
It's one of those things that really troubles me because I'll talk to so many parents who say, but I don't put these expectations on my kids. But when you talk to the kids, they're saying, everyone expects so much of me. My parents put so much pressure on me. My teachers put so much pressure on me. The world expects so much of me. Who's right?
I think the kids are right. But what I will say is this. I don't think it's any one person's fault. I think the world has become much more challenging for young people, and if you really want to get at the nub of it, what we're seeing is a secular stagnation in our developed economies right now. And you can attribute that to all sorts of different things: rising inflation, increased cost of getting energy out of the ground. We've got overhang of debt, aging populations. The list goes on. They're like a 10-ton anchor that's hanging on growth, and the difficulty is. There's not much, the opportunities are dwindling. The middle classes are hollowing out. You find it for the first time ever, young people aren't guaranteed to have the same standard of life as their parents. And all this is due to secular forces that nobody out there can do anything about. But what does that look like on the ground? Well, it looks like increased competition for the best school places, to get into the best colleges, because those are the places where you're going to guarantee yourself some access to the best jobs, which right now are the only jobs that are growing in terms of pay packets. So all of this pressure, and it's not just in the academic sphere, it's also on social media. We're looking at all the perfect lives and lifestyles of the very elite and wondering why on earth we aren't having that, or why on earth we feel like we're always running on an uphill treadmill that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. There's all of these pressures out there that are weighing on everybody, not just young people. Parents see these pressures, they pass them down to their kids because they know it's important right now more than ever to do well in school. The young people then are seeing those pressures from the parents. They're also seeing them from the teachers. The point I'm making here, Justin, is that yes, the kids are right. I think they are experiencing a lot more pressure, or certainly a pressure that they feel is excessive. But I don't think it's any one person's fault. I think we're living through right now a moment where pressures are just increasing on young people, full stop, and everybody who is around those young people are certainly radiating those pressures back at them. I think that's what's going on.
If I'm looking for solutions for parents who know that they're perhaps pushing their kids' perfectionism a little hard, or they're being perfectionistic in their desires for their children to succeed, how do parents step back from unhealthy and perfectionistic expectations? Because it feels like you're cheating, right? Like, it feels like there's something wonderfully validating about saying, but you can do more and you can push harder and you can grow and expand and be the best you can be. There's something in that.
Okay, it's a really, really good question, and I get asked this a lot. And there is a lot of pushback. I mean, some of the criticism of my book has come from big mainstream outlets, Wall Street Journal and The Economist, is that, this is, and we're going to need a little bit of perfectionism for success. I think this is a complete misunderstanding of what perfectionism is, number one, and also this idea that just more automatically means better. That's not what the data says. If you look at the relationship between perfectionism and performance, there's a low relationship to non-existent relationship between those things. Why is that? It's perplexing, but it's actually quite simple when you think about it. Perfectionists work hard, but they work too hard, so they burn out. It's an unsustainable form of striving, number one, but they also do something really interesting when they encounter setbacks and challenge, and that's that they self-sabotage. Because the imperative for the perfectionist person is to avoid failure, and they will avoid failure so intently that they'll sabotage their chances of success just to avoid it. And that looks like all sorts of things. But we put people in the lab time and time again. We put them in situations of challenge, and then when they've encountered a failure, let's say, we give them a task to do, a sports task or a puzzle. We said, go ahead, do it. No, unfortunately you failed, but it's okay, have another go. The non-perfectionistic people don't really change their effort the second time. In fact, they work a little bit harder. But perfectionistic people, their effort falls off a cliff. Because the shame and embarrassment of failing in that moment is so intense, they don't want to feel those feelings again. So they essentially just hold themselves back. They withdraw. Because you can't fail at something you didn't try at, right? So I'm not going to do that again because I feel so intently self-conscious. And it's not just withdrawal that perfectionist people do. They also procrastinate. And procrastination is a strong signature of the perfectionist for this exact reason. It's an anxiety management technique. So, unsustainable overwork combined with intense amounts of self-sabotage mean that perfectionistic people are no more likely to succeed. In fact, they're less likely to succeed than non-perfectionistic people. And I think this is the myth we really have to break through. Number one, that actually it's not about more work and avoid at all costs the indignity of failing. It's actually about a different way of thinking about what success is. That actually it's not about more. And sometimes what's most important is that we're allowing ourselves failure and mistakes, setbacks, imperfections, vulnerabilities into our lives. We're letting those things in and wash through us as joyous reminders of actually what it means to be a human being. These are the things we should be celebrating, not the elite, it's perfect 10 out of 10 performances, because those things are so fleeting, so rare, and so almost unhuman, actually, when you look at how often we are able to do those things. What's more human is those moments of failure, setback, and challenges. So that's really, I think, the biggest thing we have to break through, because it's so important. Not just understanding well-being, but also understanding performance too.
One last question as we wrap up, because our time is well and truly spent. There are a whole lot of parents who are actually pretty chill, but their children show up with perfectionistic traits. So the parents are modeling being relaxed about making mistakes. They're having conversations about contingencies if things don't work out so well. They're helping their children to know that it's not that big of a deal, but in the kids' minds, it is. They've absorbed the messages from somewhere and they just think they have to be perfect. What, if anything, can you advise parents whose children are struggling under this weight of self-inflicted, self-oriented, self-prescribed perfectionism?
The first thing I'd say is that it's so important to remember that this is not your fault, that there are a lot of things outside of our control, a lot of wayward pressures that are put on young people outside of the household and the home that impact on their belief systems and the things that they think are important. I think that's so important. Also, every young person is different, and there's a Judith Harris, very famous developmental psychologist, said that you go into parenting with the best of intentions, and then you realize very quickly that you're reduced to nothing more than a helpless spectator. And that's also so important to recognize, something that I'm going to have to remember as I become a parent of growing children myself, because I think that takes a lot of pressure off personal power responsibility, that you can shape and change everything and every last detail about children's life. You can't. You just simply can't. And that's actually okay. It is okay. What you can do is create a loving, warm environment for young people that's got a consistency of approval and love. That's very important. And that reminds them at all times that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to fail. These are very humanizing experiences, and lead by example in that respect. That's the most important thing. Those big, broad, philosophical things that you take into your parenting, and make sure you apply them. But just remember that it's tough. It's not an easy thing to do, to be a parent, and you're doing an amazing job. So keep going.
Okay, and stop striving perfectionism in parenting, because it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a perfect parent.
No. Well, that's what Donna Winnicott said, right? The perfect mother. Don't try and be perfect. That's not good for you. It's never going to happen because it's impossible anyway, but it's not good for the child either. They need to experience setback. They need to see that failure is a part and parcel of life, because that's what creates a rounded human being.
Yeah, love it. The Perfection Trap is the book by Associate Professor Thomas Curran from the London School of Economics. Tom, thank you so much for your time and for joining me on the Happy Families podcast.
Thank you, Justin. It's been a wonderful conversation.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. If you'd like more info about making your family happier, check out Tom Curran's book, The Perfection Trap. The Perfection Trap is available wherever you buy your books, or of course you can visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.